Okay, imagine finding out that government officials in your city weren't just considering a new nicotine ban, but they were actively recruiting speakers, coordinating testimony, finding vulnerable little kids to prop up in front of microphones, and seemingly, in some cases, deciding the outcome before the public hearing even happens.
News, yeah!
Well, according to newly obtained public records by Reason Magazine from Massachusetts, that's kind of exactly what was going on behind the scenes as small towns in Massachusetts started adopting these so-called nicotine-free generation laws. Truly and honestly, no matter where you stand on tobacco or nicotine or vaping or pouches or youth or anything, these emails that have been obtained should make everyone uncomfortable. So nicotine-free generation policies don't ban nicotine outright. Instead, it creates kind of a permanent age-based prohibition. If you're born after a certain date, it's usually January 1st, 2004 or 2005, you can never legally purchase a nicotine product. Not when you're 21, not when you're 30, not when you're 50, never. And these nicotine-free generation, these NFG policies typically include all nicotine products, cigarettes, vapes, pouches, basically any and all nicotine products, and the justification is protecting the future generations from nicotine addiction. Now, these types of bans never work, and any expert will tell you that they just lead to an out-of-control illicit market. But that's not even the real story here. The real story here is how these bans are getting passed. One of the most revealing emails obtained came from Hopkinton Health Director Sean McAuliffe. Writing to another state official, he said, "The Commonwealth has assigned NFG staff and reps from the MMA to insulate us through the remainder of this process." Now, that is a wild and insane statement to make because, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't public hearings supposed to be the process where officials listen to the public and then make decisions, not a process where outside organizations insulate officials from criticism? Before a public hearing was even held, McAuliffe wrote, "My board is committed to passing this." Again, before a hearing, before testimony, before public input, it appears, at least according to his emails, that the outcome's kind of already been decided. Vape break. The third email is probably the most rage-inducing email because while discussing the adoption of a ban in a neighboring town, McAuliffe wrote, "I can speak to Rajit and find some kids." The context of this really matters. Officials were discussing how to generate support for their policy, not responding to consumer or community demand, not organizing neutral public health outreach. They were actively looking for speakers that would support the ban. According to the documents obtained by Reason Magazine, this was not an isolated incident. The article describes government employees distributing just template testimonies. They were recruiting parents, they were recruiting students, they were organizing advocacy groups, they were organizing support for these hearings. Let me just be absolutely super really clear right here. People are absolutely allowed to support these nicotine bans. Parents can support them, students can support them, advocacy groups can support them. The real issue is whether government officials should be organizing and orchestrating support for policies that they're supposed to be evaluating impartially. That, I think, is the really big question that these emails ask. The most interesting part of this story isn't about nicotine, it's governance. Many of these local boards of health aren't legislative bodies. They are appointed or lightly elected small groups, often with very little public scrutiny. And according to these documents and emails, some of these officials view public hearings less as a way to gather input from the public and more as just a step in the process to the outcome that was seemingly already predetermined. In fact, in one Massachusetts town, residents gathered enough signatures to stop the ban at a town meeting. The Board of Health kept the policy anyway. And look, whether you support nicotine bans or oppose nicotine bans, the governing part is the part that deserves attention because today it's whatever, nicotine. Tomorrow could be a slightly different, maybe more complicated issue, maybe one that affects you directly. Public health will argue that these measures are necessary to protect another generation from the dangers of nicotine addiction. And critics like me will argue that they will also create an out-of-control illicit market and create a sort of permanent underclass of adults that no matter how old they get, will always be denied products that older adults can have. These emails and documents and the Reason Magazine article don't settle that debate, but they do reveal how these policies were pushed behind the scenes. And honestly, if public hearings are going to mean anything, People should probably know if the outcome was determined before they walk into the room. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below, not about vaping or nicotine or cigarettes. Should public health officials be coordinating speakers and organizing testimony for policies that they're supposed to be evaluating impartially? It might be a hell no from me. This has been a GrimmGreen video. Let's stay cigarette smoke free as long as the government will let us.
It's like 10:30 and I'm just gonna smoke, so